So, the topic of today is quite is very important because we are real estate agents, and we're selling high value properties. And the implication of that is that if you don't do it properly, you could lose your client and you could also get into a lot of trouble. So this class is about how to protect yourself and also how to protect your clients. Now, to understand the importance of this class, you need to start from the very top. And the very top is, why do you actually do what you do? So as a real estate agent, most of us, we don't have a why. But it could also be confusing when you ask someone to define their why. So I'll just go ahead and tell you my own why. Now, I sell real estate because I'm trying to help people. And my properties, the investment that I sell, the services I render is an avenue, an opportunity to help people. So at the core of what I do is my need to help. And if you look at it in the sense of, if you're trying to help somebody, you need to ensure that the product or the service you are rendering to them, they can find safety in it. They can be rest assured that whatever it is they are doing with you keeps them safe. So it is your job and your responsibility as a real estate agent to understand that, look, the safety of my client is paramount, not just for them, but for me. Because I've seen a lot of real estate agents sell some properties and get into a lot of trouble. Imagine a client from 3-4 years ago calling you to talk about a property and you already spent the commissions. It could really complicate things for you if you don't do things the right way. So the essence of this class is to do two things. The first thing is to teach you how to protect yourself, right? How do you go about this real estate game so that you don't get in trouble? The second thing is how to protect your clients, because it's not just about you. You're also responsibility for the safety. You're also responsible for the safety of your clients. So now the objective of this class is to equip agents to avoid high-risk transactions, to protect clients effectively, and to build long-term trust that drives repeat business. So, I mean, it's very obvious, but if you treat people well, just like Mr. Oyin said, there's an opportunity for a referral. And referrals are the holy grail of any salesperson, because you know that, number one, the trust the client is going to have for you is going to be very high. Number two, it's very easy to close the deal from a referral. But you'll never get a referral if you don't do the initial job well. So doing a proper job, apart from the fact that it protects your client, it also does magic for your business because it allows you to grow. Now, the role of an agent in real estate is to ensure that the client is safe and to protect their clients from bad investment. Now, your responsibility goes beyond selling. There are a couple of things that I want you to understand. As a salesperson, your job is not just to sell. Your job is to be a risk filter for your clients, right? Your job is to be a risk filter for your clients. Your job goes beyond just suggesting property, suggesting projects, suggesting investment to your client. Your job is to be a risk filter for your client. Now, what is the definition of risk as far as real estate is concerned? Now, please, it's very important to note this thing down. What is the definition of risk as far as real estate is concerned? Now, as far as real estate is concerned, any factor that can lead to financial loss, legal exposure, or reputational damage is risk as far as real estate is concerned. I'll go over it again. Now, any factor that can lead to financial loss in the sense that if a client engages you and buys your product, if they lose money in the process, that is financial loss. I've known of a couple of people that bought properties where they were not supposed to buy. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a surveyor friend, and he had a client abroad. Now, this client had already bought a property, but did not inform the surveyor before he bought it. Now, what happened was crazy because the man was staying abroad, and when he came back to Nigeria, he realized that the coordinates of the place they gave him for the land was somewhere on the water. Like, it was literally not land, it was actually on top of the water. So that kind of agent that sold that kind of property or project to the man has cost him financial loss. Now, the second thing is legal exposure. Now, whatever is going to take you and your clients to a courtroom is legal exposure. So you sell something to somebody today and they're dissatisfied for whatever reason, they drag you to court. Legal exposure. You understand? For example, the whole thing that's going on with P1 real estate home companies, where some people are taking them to court and all that, right? That is legal exposure. That is a possible risk in real estate. Now, the third thing is reputational damage. which I think is the most fatal one, because the truth is that real estate, as most facilitators will tell you about, it is a low trust environment. What that actually means is that people are skeptical, people are scared, people are not trusting. So it is your job to ensure that you protect them and also ensure that you don't get reputational damage. Because once word goes around that, once I do business with this real estate company, once I do business with this real estate agent, there'll be complications. People generally tend to avoid you. So the definition of risk is anything that can lead to financial loss, anything that can lead to legal exposure, and anything that can lead to reputational damage. So now the next most obvious thing is that what are the common risk areas in real estate? Like, what are the things that usually cause people problems in real estate? What are the common risk areas that people experience that causes them complications in a real estate investment? Now, the first one is fraudulent land, which is omonile issues. Now, this one needs like no introduction. I mean, of course, it's 2026 and real estate is evolving. Most people can now contract or engage in real estate companies to get good and credible lands. For example, land nest. But at the same time, Omonile people are not out of the picture yet, because most times real estate companies still have to deal with them. So Omonile issues are something that will probably never go away. The clients are just protected from it because the companies deal with these people directly. But if people buy from the wrong place, Omonile issues are something that always occurs. So it is a risk area. Now, the second thing is invalid or incomplete documentation. Invalid or incomplete documentation. Now, this invalid or incomplete documentation is more common than most people think. For example, as recently as 2 weeks ago, I was invited to come and consult for a real estate company. And the person that actually owns it is a long-standing friend. I've known this man for over like 12, 13 years. And he said, look, these are the projects that we have. Just come and give me advice on how we can actually push this project out. And of course, I got there and I asked him that, okay, what are the documentation that this place has? And he told me explicitly that he has a CFO. Now, bear in mind that his project manager is also my friend. So I asked the project manager, I said, what are the documents that this project has? And the project manager told me that, well, initially had an excision, but the excision had been revoked. I'm talking of something that happened as recently as 2 weeks ago. Now, it now begs the question that, look, you are asking me to give you advice on how to go about something, but you're not exactly being honest. I'm a friend and you are not being honest with me. Now, talk less of clients that you don't know. If you are being dishonest with somebody that you don't know, what is the tendency that you're going to be honest with somebody that you know? Right? So my point is, most people are going to be investing in properties that have poor documentation, because anybody that buys that project is going to get in trouble. As simple as that. The excision has been revoked, but the property is still being marketed as a CFO. So invalid or incomplete documentation is they are very gray area, because there are sometimes that the company you might be selling for as a real estate agent, they might not communicate the complications surrounding a land to you. So you'll be marketing the property blindly and it could cause problems for you. So invalid or incomplete documentation is another very important factor that is a risk area. Now, the third thing is unrealistic return projections, right? So when people, as Miss Onyi said earlier, when people overpromise on something that they cannot deliver on. So you see real estate agents saying that, oh, this property cost 100,000 naira. When about 3 months, it's going to cost 300,000 naira, right? Unrealistic return projections. When real estate agents tell clients to engage in all sorts of buyback projects that, don't give them the money that they're supposed to get back. So a risk area is when people tell lies. Tell people exactly what the features of a property is. If they are interested, they buy. If they are not, then they walk away. Right. So your job as a real estate agent is not to inflate, prices or inflate projections for your clients. Your job as a real estate agent is to guide them so they can make an informed decision. Line really doesn't help. Now, the fourth one is properties in restricted or unapproved locations. Now, we don't really have most of those type of issues in Ibadan, but in Lagos, a lot of those type of properties exist where they are located in places that are not approved. Right? You see somebody owns a property for 10, 15 years. One day the government comes and then demolishes their house that they spent millions of naira to build. So the major risk areas in real estate, I'll go over it again. Number one, fraudulent land, which is omonile issues. Number two, invalid or incomplete documentation. Now, number three is unrealistic project projections, and number 4 is properties in restricted or unapproved areas. So your job as a real estate agent is to ensure that all these 4 things I talked about, that you double check on behalf of your client. It's not your client's job to be weighing and considering risk. Of course, to a large extent, investors they try to protect themselves by doing their own research. But your job primarily as a real estate agent is to be able to protect your clients from complications when they are doing business with you. Now, as a real estate agent, you should have a framework, right? It's a threefold framework. And number 1 is, if you are unclear, you should verify. Right? The first thing is that if you're unclear about something, verify, find as much information about the project as possible. Right? The second thing is that if you feel rushed, you should pause. Right? If you feel rushed, you should pause. If you're unclear, I'll go back again. If you're unclear, you should verify. So if there's something about the project or the property that you don't know about, please be ensure to verify it. If it's about the documentation, about the title, about the location, about the projection of the property or the investment, ensure that you verify. Ignorance is not going to be an excuse. As a real estate agent, as I always say, you should know the product like the back of your hand. If you are unclear, I will ensure about anything that you sell, it is very important that you verify. Now, thankfully, if you are a salesperson of landless homes and properties, you'd understand that our directors and our management, they are very accessible. You could walk into the office and ask questions, and people will actually attend to you. Most of you on this group actually have the directors' numbers, and you call them, to ask about things, and they are usually very open and willing to give you information about projects. So for some other real estate companies, not like that. But with this company, we're very open with communication and accountability. So if there's anything concerning any of the properties that we sell, it is very important that you verify. Now, I said if you feel rushed, you should pause. Now, this rushing part is also something you should take cognizance of, because real estate companies that are trying to, sell you something that is not good, they have a tendency to rush you. For example, I've worked with companies that will tell you that, oh, a property is going to appreciate in 2 days, pay the money now, the prices are going to go up and all of that. Like, usually, if you feel rushed to make a decision as a real estate agent selling for any company, ensure that you calm down, right? And pause and think about it very carefully. Now, the last thing is that if it's too good to be true, ensure that you investigate, right? If it is too good to be true, ensure that you investigate. Now, one way you can go about it is that, look, if you are selling a property or a project and the usual price around that axis is, let's say, hypothetically speaking, 10 million naira, and you see a property that is being sold in that axis, same documentation, same area, same landmarks, that is being sold for, let's say, 3 million naira, then you should start asking very important questions. Why is this property so cheap? The truth is that real estate can be affordable, but if you are going to make a good and proper investment, it is going to cost you money. So there's no reason why properties in a certain area should be 10 million naira, and you just see one that is 2.5 million naira, 1.5 million naira, and you think that you struck a bargain. You're probably going to get in a lot of trouble. So have a decision framework, and I'll go over it again for those just getting on the call, right? If something is unclear, please verify. If you feel rushed to make a decision as a real estate agent, you need to pause. And if your property is too good to be true, you need to ensure that you investigate. If a property is too good to be true, you need to ensure that you investigate. Now, the second thing we're talking about today is client protection strategy, right? How to properly protect your client. And for those of us just joining the call again, I said at the start of this call that, look, your job as a real estate agent is to help people. And your investment, your property, whatever it is that you sell, is an avenue to help people create a better life for themselves. So the core, what you do is help. Your job is to actually help people. And if you're trying to help somebody, I'm sure at the back of your mind somewhere, you want your approach to be safe for yourself and the client. So understand that if you're doing business, especially real estate, your client protection strategy has to be top notch, right? And how do you do that? You need to be an advisory first and a salesperson second, right? You need to be an advisory first and a salesperson second. As Dr. Shola always say, the best way to sell is by being an advisory, giving information, allowing clients to reach an informed decision by themselves. Now, you cannot be an advisory except you have product knowledge. So I always preaching product knowledge every single day. You need to know the product like the back of your hand. There's no reason why you should not know the price of a product. There's no reason why you should not know the title of a product. There's no reason why you should not know the installment time frame of a product. It just makes you look incapable and irresponsible. So the first thing before you can even advise somebody, why are you giving somebody advice whereas you're not even informed on your own? The first thing is to be an advisory first and a salesperson second. Now, how do you protect clients, right? How do you actually protect clients? How do you protect clients? Now, there are four ways to go about it. Now, the first way is to clearly communicate risk, right? To clearly communicate risk. Now, I'll go over this again. Clearly communicate risk. Thankfully, if you are selling for land, homes, and properties, you don't have to worry about risk because all our properties, we double and triple verify them before we put them out to general public. In fact, most of the properties or projects that you see us selling today, they have been in the works for a couple of months back. And the reason why they are not really pushed to the market hastily is because we are still doing our research. Except we have 100% thumbs up on the property, we don't push the property out. Now, every investment has its own risk. And as a salesperson, you need to be able to identify those risks and communicate them to your client. For example, if you are selling a property or a project to a client that has a documentation that has not been completed, if you are being honest, you need to communicate to clients about the title the property has, the risk the property has having that title, whether the title can be upgraded or not, and the risk that actually associated with that project if the client decides to buy. So if a property has, for example, no title, but the company intends to do title documentation on the property, it is your job to communicate to the client that, look, as of today, this property I'm about to sell to you, it does not have any title. We are working on it, and these are the risks if you buy. There's a tendency to lose your land. Tendency to have a delay. There's a tendency to, see clients as people that right now clients that help and that sell because we are looking past clients and we are looking at the money. The moment when you start treating people like human beings and seeing people as an opportunity to help somebody else, you will not exaggerate your marketing because you know within you that this property you are saying is going to appreciate 300% in the next 6 months. It is not true. It is false. So avoid exaggerated marketing. That's how you protect the resources of your clients. Because a client is dropping 2 million naira, 3 million naira for a product, for a service, right? You need to understand that that person is trusting you. And if you exaggerate the marketing, there's a tendency for the person to buy. But the truth is that the person is not actually buying the truth. They are buying what you projected to them. So it does not pay to lie, right? So don't exaggerate your marketing. Tell people exactly what the product is about, exactly the ROI projection, and everything that has to do with the property or the project. Now, the third thing you can also do to protect your client is to align their property recommendation with their client goals. Now, it also has to do with being an advisory, right? You need to first understand the client's problems first, understand their pain points. Then you now pick a property, that takes care of that pain point of the client. So be an advisory first and a salesperson second. If somebody is looking for a source of passive income, of course, you'll be able to recommend a project, a property, or an investment like Oli Modern Market to them, right? So you need to understand the pain points of the client first before you now project or suggest a property to them. But I've noticed that most of us, all we care about is a commission. All we care about is how to make money. We don't care about the pain points of the client. We just want to be able to ring a bell on the group that we sold something. But if you are doing your job properly, the first thing first is to understand the pain points of the client so that you can suggest property, you can suggest investments, that tally with that client's investment goal. Now, a critical question you should ask yourself is that if this investment fails, can the client recover financially? If this investment fails, can the client recover financially? If this investment fails, can the client recover financially? Now, if you're about to encourage somebody to make an investment, to buy a product, to um, patronize you and use your service, you need to ask yourself, like, what are the risks of this investment? What are the risks of this product? If something happens tomorrow, will this client survive financially? Now, most times we are too greedy. Anytime we want to make a sale, we are just so desperate to make the sale happen. We don't really humanize people. And I feel we need to double down on this part of the class, because if you are doing your job properly, guys, the first thing you need to understand is that before somebody is a client, the person is a human being first. And you need to learn how to connect to people on like a human level. You need to put yourself in the person's shoes. You need to have a lot of empathy. If you have a lot of empathy, you would realize that most of the things you promise clients, especially when you cannot deliver on, you will not do it. If you put yourself in the client's shoes, you'd understand that, people actually work so hard to earn money. And for somebody to be trying to invest in a product that you sell, it means that they trust you. It will be a betrayal of that trust if you're not giving the client 100% information about your service or the product. So ask yourself that, look, this property I'm projecting to the client, this property I'm suggesting, do I trust the company? Do I trust the product? Does this company have a track record of delivering success? If the answer is no, it will be best that you recommend a company that actually suits the needs and the goals of the client. So before you project any property to somebody, before you say, oh, come and buy this, come and buy that, ask yourself, is this property safe? Is this property secure? Can I vouch for the company that I am selling for? Now, your communication approach should be to prioritize honesty over urgency. Please, if possible, you should write this down. Prioritize honesty over urgency, right? Prioritize honesty over urgency. So if you are talking to clients, I always tell people that, look, especially my team members, that if you are trying to, market something to somebody, you should always prioritize two things. Number one is honesty, and number two is clear information. Now, if you are honest enough with people and you give them enough information, usually they can make a buy decision by themselves. You cannot really put your hand in somebody's pocket and force them to pay for a property. But what you can do within the confines of your own ability and within your own responsibility is to, number one, be honest. No matter what is going on within you and your client, you always reserve the right to be honest with them. Now, the second thing is clear communication. Ensure that everything regarding the property or the investment is being clearly communicated. Now, the second thing is to build trust through transparency. To build trust through transparency. To build trust through transparency, right? And it is very crazy that one of the biggest edge you can have as a salesperson is to actually do what you say that you'll do. And most people think that, it sounds very straightforward. I said I was going to do something and I did it. It is not as simple as it sounds, because a lot of people have dealt with a lot of people that said they were going to do something and did not do it. So something as simple as keeping to your promises is a ridiculous way to build transparency and to build trust with your client. So if you really want to protect your client, you need to do exactly what you said you're going to do. For example, I have a client that I've been servicing for I've known her for over 10 years, but recently started doing business together. Let's say that over a period of 6 years, she has started actively buying real estate from me. And she has never seen any of the properties or the projects that she has bought from me. She's currently in Nigeria. All she does is that if I put something on Instagram, I market something on my WhatsApp or my Instagram, my business page, she asks me about the property, the project. She send the money and she asks that I send documentation to her house. She has never gone for inspection, never. Right? And she has bought multiple properties from me, but I was always able to build trust through transparency, right? So if you are dealing with a client, if you are dealing with a client, if you are trying to get people to trust you, if you are trying to promote yourself and your own business, one thing you need to do is to be able to be transparent. It is an incredible way to build trust. Always ensure that you keep the promises that you make. Keep the promises that you make. If you promise that something will be ready at a certain time, ensure that it is ready. If for any reason it is not ready, ensure that you properly communicate with the client so that their expectations are not cut short. So you can build transparency, you can build trust just by being honest. Now, the third thing we're talking about today is fraud awareness and prevention. Fraud awareness and prevention. Fraud awareness and prevention. Now, there are a couple of common fraud scenarios, and I'll be listing out about 4 of them, right? The first one is multiple sales of the same property. Multiple sales for the same property, multiple sales for the same properties. Now, thankfully, in landless homes and properties, we've never and we will never have issues like that. But for most of you that are sales partners of this group, that still have other people, other companies that you sell for, you have to be very careful, because I'd rather not mention the real estate companies, but there are some companies, even in the city of Ibadan, that sell, one land to about 3 or 4 people, and they just never allocate. So if you're about to sell something to somebody, ensure that a possible fraud scenario is when a real estate company over allocates. So for example, there are 100 plots in an estate and you are selling it to 120 people. By the time allocation comes, there's going to be a problem. So multiple sales of the same property is one of the fraud scenarios that happens very often in the real estate space. Now, the second thing is forged or manipulated documents, right? Forged or manipulated documents. Forged or manipulated documents. Now, I've been selling real estate for quite a while, and thankfully, over time, I built a network of people that also service different things in real estate. So I have a couple of friends that are surveyors, a couple of friends that are engineers, and we have this conversation over and over again about documentation. I've had surveyors say that, look, a client bought a property and the coordinates were false. A client bought a property and the survey was not even registered. A client bought a property and the documentation titles on that property was false. So in the real estate space, people will go any length to make money, right? That's why the trust level is becoming lesser and lesser every day, because people have been sold property that have forged or manipulated documentation. Now, the third one is false representation of ownership, right? False representation of ownership. Now, if people are going to buy properties from a real estate companies, it saves them a lot of hassle and stress. But some people like to cut corners, so they like to engage omonile, people to buy land from them, because in their own opinion, those properties are cheaper. But the thing is that cheap can become very expensive in the long run. Because, for example, if you buy a property or a product from a credible company like Landless Homes and Properties, you know that you get your documentation. You get it physically. You can't get it in your mail. You don't have to deal with any money-led people. What we try to do is bridge the gap, ensure that our clients are protected, they are safe, and they can enjoy investment in the safest possible way. But for some people that like to buy from Omonile, what usually happens is that sometimes you can want to buy a property from somebody, and somebody will masquerade as the head of the family, Olori Ebi. I believe that's what it's called, right? And what now happens is that if you pay money to that person, a couple of months, a couple of weeks down the line, somebody else can show up and say, look, this person you paid money to, we don't know him. He's the bastard son of our late grandfather. We've never seen him before. And what now happens is that you now have to pay money to somebody else again. And you could do that over 3 or 4 times, when you could easily just do business with a credible real estate company. So one of the fraud scenarios that people face on a daily basis investing in real estate is false representation of ownership, right? Somebody is presenting themselves as the owner of a property, whereas they are not the owner of the property. Now, the fourth one is artificial urgency, right? Artificial urgency. I think I spoke about this before, but it's similar to a fraud case, because you are presenting evidence that is false. Oh, somebody is coming to buy this land today. Somebody has paid half of the money. But if you pay the full money, they will refund your money back to you. So there are common fraud scenarios in the real estate space. I'll go over them again for those of us just joining the call. Now, the first thing is multiple sales of the same property. The second thing is forged or manipulated documents. The third thing is false representation of ownership. And the fourth thing is artificial urgency. Now, how do you actually battle this? How do you ensure that your client is protected from most of these scenarios as a real estate agent? Now, the first thing is to verify company legitimacy, right? Verify a company legitimacy. Most times, the registration number of the CAC number of real estate companies or any company general is out. You can pick those number and verify this company. Are they exactly who they say they are? That's one way to do it, is verify the company legitimacy. Now, the second thing is to physical office presence, right? Physical office presence. For everybody on this group, I'm sure you already know exactly where the Landless Homes and Properties offices in the city of Ibadan and Bodija. So, and the office is always open. In fact, most sales partners, they come to the office, they make videos. In fact, as early as last week, I had a client come in to just inspect the office space because he wanted to be sure, and he wanted to feel safe making investment, with the company, right? So inspect the office space. Now, the third thing is to check their track record, right? Check their track record. Check their track record. So I always preach this. If you are dealing with a real estate company, please ask questions. Which people have done business with them before? Which agents have sold for them before? Which customers have they had before? What is their experience like? What are people saying about this real estate company? Do they provide their documentation? Do they allocate on time? Check their track record. Because the reality of things is this: anybody can promise anything, but you can actually tell what somebody is going to do by the things that they've done in the past. So anybody can promise that they are going to do anything, but the reality of things is this: you can always judge people by their past precedences. So for example, Landnest, everybody knows, anybody that does real estate in Ibadan knows that these people, they allocate on time. These people, they allocate constantly. They even do private allocation. Everybody knows that if you buy a property from us, you are going to get allocated. We don't have allocation issues. There's nobody online or offline that's ever complained about the service that's being rendered by this company. So check track record. Now, the first thing is to do independent document checks, right? Do independent document check. So, I mean, you could ask for the survey of a property, and usually the operations team is there. Very happy to share those information with you. So if you want to do like an independent check, oh, this property, and go ahead with marketing or do business. So always verify the documentation that you are giving. Now, there are a couple of things to avoid, right? Miss Beauty, can you switch off your mic, please? Thank you very much. There are a couple of things to avoid, and one of those things is reliance on WhatsApp only documents, right? Reliance on WhatsApp only documents. So if you are in a real estate company and they send you an e-document, you do yourself a lot of good to actually go and verify those documents by yourself. Now, the second thing is verbal assurances without evidence. Verbal assurances without evidence. If you are always working with real estate companies that are always using their mouth to allocate, they're always using their mouth to document, they're always using their mouth to take care of their clients, they're always using their mouth to provide documents, you need to be very, very careful. Before I joined Landnest, I was working as a freelance for a couple of years, and there are so many bitter experiences that you'd experience when you're just a freelance, because you are exposed to most of the fraudulent practices of many real estate companies. And that's why I'm thankful for Landnest every single day, because every single customer that I've brought to the company, they have nothing to complain about. But if you're a freelance, and I'm speaking to people that sell for us but sell for other people, you have to be very careful, because the type of security that we provide here is not really provided elsewhere. There's some companies that you sell for, and 2 weeks later, you and your customer, you guys are dragging each other to court. So you have to be very careful that people are not just being verbal, that they're actually providing the value, they're actually providing the documentation, they're actually doing the allocation that they said that they were going to do. Now, if the ownership of something is unclear, please disengage immediately. If the ownership of something is unclear, disengage immediately. If the ownership of something is unclear, ensure that you disengage immediately. So another thing is how can you actually be sure that a company has possession of a certain project or a certain product? Now, this is another class for another day, but I'll just give you like a couple of tips that you can actually use. Now, if a company has physically taken possession, you would always see their signpost there. So even when I used to sell as a freelance, I used to sell for some companies that for some reason they just never had their signboard there. They used to take us for inspection at odd hours every single time, not for like general allocation, just for like small allocation. They will go with like a lot of security guards and security guys. It just shows that they did not really have possession of the land, and the land was being tussled. So there's some things you should look out for. There's some things you should have to be very, very sensitive about. If you are looking to protect your clients, ensure that the ownership of a property or a project that you are selling actually belongs to the people that you are selling it for. Now, the last subtopic for today is documentation and due diligence. Documentation and due diligence. Now, when a client actually buys a property or a project, right, there are a couple of documents that the person will be given. For example, in Landnest, on average, we give a contract of sale, we give a deed of assignment, we give a survey, and for example, a project like Oli Modern Market will be given like a lease agreement, right? So these are a couple of documents or documentation titles that people are given. Now you need to understand what the core documentations are. For example, your survey plan actually confirms the location. So what the survey actually does, is to confirm a location. Now, the C of O, which is certificate of occupancy, it confirms the legal, the legal position of that property, right? The deed of assignment is for transfer of ownership. So the company owns the property, they are transferring ownership to the person that actually buys it. That's what the deed of ownership is. Now, the truth is that if you are selling a property or a project, do not market and do not sell what you don't fully understand. Don't market and don't sell what you don't fully understand. Now, when I'm talking to people or I'm trying to educate people about real estate, I always encourage people to ask questions, especially sales partners. And I always tell my team members that, look, there are no stupid questions, because if you ask a question, you're only a fool for one day. But if you don't ask, you are a fool for like a very long time. And the truth is that ignorance is not an excuse. That you did not know that something was not properly documented is not going to stand when the problems come. So if you're unclear about something, oh, this property, you said I'm going to get a registered survey, I'm getting a provisional one. Why is that the case? For example, during our last allocation at NFCC, some clients actually walked up in the site and construction and I'm very accessible. If there's a documentation you don't understand, there's a title you don't understand, there are some clauses in the contract or in the SAQ or in our broker that's not being properly communicated. A lot of things that just can be valid but still not applicable. And you realize later that the survey that they gave is actually not even the survey for the property or the project that they are trying to market to you. Now, there's to round up, there's a practical checklist for agents, a practical checklist for the actual owner that you sell. Now, has the property been properly validated? Has the property been properly validated? It also has to do with doing your own independent check to find out, the property, the project, and whether it's properly validated. Now, this is that our government aside that project and property. But over time, when you go and verify, the documents might be authentic, but it might be the documents for another place, another project. I've seen it happen before, where a business owner told me that he presented execution documents to me, but the execution document was not even the document of the land that he asked me to market for him. So it happens a lot, right? Where people actually present documents to you. It's not about checking the authenticity of a document. The documents that are being presented, are they the documents for the property that I'm trying to sell? So you could actually have an original C of O in your hands. You could have an original registered survey, but that document is actually not even for the property or the project that you are selling. Now, the last thing is, does this align with the client's objectives? Right? Does this property align with the client's objectives? Now, for those of us just getting on the call, I kept hammering on something, right? And I said that primarily your job as a salesperson is to help. Your job as a salesperson is to help somebody with the product or the services that you render. So helping people is at the core of whatever it is that you do. Your project, the property that you sell, are an avenue to help somebody. And the help could be of different types. It could be help someone to get financial security, help somebody to be more responsible with their resources. Whatever help you think you're trying to render, your products are an avenue to do that. So you need to understand that your client's objectives are what now determine the product that you sell to them. Now, most times we don't even see people as people. We see them as an opportunity to earn a commission. We see them as an opportunity to get richer. But if you're doing your job properly, you understand you are supposed to help people first, then the money comes secondary. And the more people you help, the more money you actually get. Because when you help people genuinely and it comes from a place of genuine care and trust, there's a tendency that they'll do business with you over and over and over again. So before you sell something to somebody, don't just think of, oh, this one is 10 million naira. If I sell it to the client, I'll get 1 million naira. This one is 5 million naira. If I said I'll get 500K, let me sell, they want 10 million naira. Oh, no, that's not how things are done. Those things will get you short-term results, but they will not get you long-term results. And if you are seeing real estate as a career, if you're trying to position as somebody that'll still be relevant in the next 10, 15 years, it is very, very important that you understand the client's objectives and now position a property or a project that can help them achieve that objective. So I'm going to round off with this, right? Anybody can sell a property, but not everybody can protect a client. The professionals who can sell a property and protect the clients are the ones who will be around for a long time. I'll go over it again. Anybody can sell a property, but not everyone can protect a client. The professionals who can both sell a property and who can protect their clients are going to be around for a long time, right? So selling a property is one thing, but protecting your clients, is also another thing. If you're able to sell a property, you actually get money for yourself. You're